Will 2021 be the year of the Great Reset? Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.Heise here and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your shine of coffee and let's have a look at this article from Mint, written by none other than Carl Schwab and shared to me by a viewer. 2021 should be the year of the Great Reset. So this reminds me of the Great Leap Forward, the Cultural Revolution, all these socialistic movements and political agendas, and what did they all result in every single time? Massive death. Every time, all throughout history. So let's have a look at this. This is why we need to be quite wary of elites and globalists making claims like this, because it all sounds nice, it all sounds good, it's all dressed up in friendly sounding terms, but there is an inherent danger where people try to centrally plan the world. The pandemic has reminded us that we cannot aim solely for high GDP and profits on the assumptions that maximizing these indicators automatically redounds to the benefit of society. Really, think about it. Think about all the technological innovation that has occurred thanks to the free market, thanks to enterprises, thanks to businesses. Could you imagine, the technology that they've had in place now, just to allow businesses to still continue, to allow people to still learn, to allow them to actually assess and treat this illness? If it didn't exist a few years ago, if it happened 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. It's funny that. So, a renewed focus on public health, net zero pledges, and the arrival of stakeholder capitalism matrix will ensure 2021 will be a new year zero. Now that's, anyway, stakeholder capitalism matrix. Well, stakeholders, if you want to have a say, buy a portion of the businesses. That's how you can do it. This is the thing. One of the advantages of a truly free civilization, a truly free society which has a market without any manipulation, which I know that it doesn't really exist, but still, the free markets that we have are better than the alternatives, everyone. They give you an opportunity for you to better yourself and to lift yourself out of the gutter. In these socialist equality ones, that opportunity isn't even there. The year ahead could be a historic one, and in a positive way. 75 years after the original year zero that followed World War II, we once again have a chance to rebuild. The process after 45 was literal, building anew from the wreckage of war. This time the focus is on the material world, but also on so much more. We must aim for a high degree of societal sophistication and create a sound basis for the well-being of all people and the planet. I mean, it sounds good, but since 1945, what has freed more people from poverty? What has improved the quality of life of people around the world? What has given more people access to education, drinking water, and opportunity? It hasn't been the United Nations. It hasn't been the WTO, or maybe indirectly. It's been the free market, everyone. It's been opportunities. All these, look at just all the charities and organizations that try and do better, and it never works. Here in Australia, look at Bridging the Gap. All of this money just thrown and thrown to try and improve the quality of life of Indigenous Australians living around the country. And what has it achieved? They're still talking about things now that they were talking about 10 years ago, 5 years ago. It's the same problems. If you look at the where they're living, look at just how controlled and regulated some of those communities are. I couldn't even step foot into some of these areas because of my race. And it's ludicrous. You can't even own a house. You can't even borrow against it. What chance do you have of starting up a business or getting out of that culture? Because every lefty wants to keep you there, keep you constrained and on their version of a plantation, because they'll farm you for all the government incentives and money. Maybe we should just airdrop a whole bunch of, Ayn Rand books on help question their true masters. All these people that are there to help you are in many ways are leeching off you. Anyway, back to this. So I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical of people who undermine the claims of what's happened. And you know what there is? I'm going to bring up a TED Talk from Hans Rosling. Okay, the best stats you've ever seen, a TED Talk. Now, he is a fantastic speaker. He's an economist, or a statistician, sorry. And he just looks at the improvements to quality of life that have occurred all around the world. I recommend that you have a look at these. Because in my architecture school, we were fed the greenwashing and just this social conscious rubbish all the way through. We even did a whole subject on this where we had hippies teaching us to question global and ethical systems. And that sent me down this path to kind of challenge it, going, it can't be that simple. There's a reason why. And, have a look at Rosling's stuff. So when people tell you, third world countries in Africa, guys, there's some parts of Africa that are doing much better than us here in Australia. And you can thank the free market. The countries that aren't, well, I wonder what type of political system they've had. I wonder. I'll give you a hint. They promise you the world and never deliver. After World War II, we developed a new economic philosophy, grounded in collaboration and integration, with material well-being as its primary objective. This project gave rise to international organizations such as the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, as well as the arrangements that would evolve into the WTO and the European Union. Well, we can see the European Union now with Britain has gone. I think it's on its last legs. A bunch of unelected bureaucrats just overriding the sovereign rights of nations. This is the problem. You have elites wanting a one world government, wanting everyone to be the same, everyone to be equal. It's going to be such a boring future, isn't it? So bland. Neoliberalism, a staunch commitment to free markets and limited government, reigned in the West, where it delivered decades of prosperity and progress. See, this is the thing. We don't have free markets, guys. When people tell you we've got free markets, we don't. Our currency is completely controlled and managed by a bank that can generate it out of nothing. You've got so much intervention. Our governments are not small at all. They're growing bigger and bigger and bigger in all Western countries. So yeah, we need, if anything, I would argue we need to look at the Austrian School of Economics and even have a smaller government to a greater extent. That would be the great reset I would love to see. But this model has broken down. Has it? Has it really? It's provided all of the opportunities, technology, and everything that has gotten us this far. So, while COVID-19 delivered the final blow, it has been clear for at least 2 decades that the post-war model is no longer sustainable, environmentally or socially, owing to today's sky-high levels of inequality. Well, that's got nothing to do with a free market. That's got everything to do with central banks intervening in the market. That's got everything to do with governments intervening in the market. They won't let anything crash. Here in Australia, we've got a housing bubble. The government just keeps throwing money and money at it. And the government doesn't have any money. That's future tax revenue that they're spending now. So they're making future generations who will probably not be able to afford to get into housing pay for a housing bubble. How's that free? How's that fair? How's that equitable? So I guess he's right. We need to move away from neoliberalism. We need to move away. We need to go to true liberal, really traditional, classical. Do you think it's going to happen? I don't think so. This is the problem. It has to be political will. I think hopefully education, we can slowly shift the Overton window to a more liberty-focused and more self-reliant focused. But we'll have to see. English historian Thomas Fuller famously said, "The darkest hour of the night comes just before the dawn, and yet we cannot simply assume that a better year will follow an annus horribilis that brought the greatest public health crisis and the steepest recession in a century. We must act to make it so." So, you don't want to miss an opportunity, guys. You can't miss it. I see 3 pillars to build on. First, 2021 could be the year when we bring COVID-19 under control. If current predictions hold, several vaccines will become available. if they allow us to beat back the pandemic, we should undertake a reckoning of what we have learned from this crisis. Well, what have we learned? We've learned now that as a small business owner, you are at risk of the government shutting down the entire economy to mitigate the spread of an illness. You're at complete risk of that. That's just part of business now. A lot of people are learning that their insurances that they've got won't cover them for this type of thing, most likely because they're not, well, either the insurance products aren't tailored to that, or they're getting out of it. So that's what we've learned. And, also you've got a lot of people who will quite happily accept authoritarian rule over them and dob in their neighbors. It seems to be an Australian thing at the moment. Although vaccines can bring stability, they are not a panacea. Like a peace settlement that ends but does not reverse the devastation of war, stopping the pandemic is merely a first step. The greater challenge will be to fix the structural flaws in our systems and institutions, many of which have failed to provide the necessary care and services to all those who need them. Well, there's the thing, you can't trust our systems and institutions. Maybe people need to be more self-reliant. Maybe we need to reduce the burden that the state places on people under this false pretense that they'll take care of us, when it doesn't seem to be. They're not taking care of us. If they would, why would they allow housing to get into such a bubble state here in Australia? Why would they allow our economic complexity to crash to the point now where we can't really compete on a global scale? Why would they allow our quality of life to decrease and our GDP per capita keep going down? So it will be up to all of us to ensure that our social welfare and healthcare systems are made more resilient for the next generation. The pandemic has reminded us that we cannot aim solely for higher GDP and profits on the assumption that maximizing these indicators automatically redounds to the benefit of society. It doesn't, which is why the coming year must bring a great reset in how we approach economic growth and governance. See, this is just screaming of more intervention in your life. Rather than less, rather than letting the market decide, people suffer the consequences for their decisions, they're going to take more from you and have more control over your life. And people will be cheering. People will most certainly be cheering. Second, 2021 will be the year when every major government, as well as a broad private sector coalitions, commit to a net zero target for greenhouse gas emissions. This means that rather than being stuck in a race to the bottom and fearing a continuous free rider problem, the world can benefit from a virtuous cycle of decarbonization. Well, if you want to do that, just go nuclear. Just invest heavily in nuclear. Problem solved. They do that, we'll start in 50 years' time, we'll have to start adding greenhouse gases to the atmosphere, I bet you. Already the European Union has agreed to enshrine 2050 climate neutrality in law. China has pledged to become climate neutral by 2060. And Japan has made a similar pledge for 2050. See, all of these years, 40 years, 30 years, it's bullshit. It doesn't mean a thing. You can promise anything in 30 years or 40 years' time. It's not going to be your problem. There are going to be other politicians that will have to deal with it, and it can get thrown out then. So these statements are complete garbage. They mean absolutely nothing. Okay, it makes people feel good. It makes people feel good that they're making a difference. So it means that the adjutants, you can redirect their rage to others. Redirect them, use them. With Joe Biden having been elected president, the US is expected to rejoin the Paris Climate Agreement and aim for 100% clean energy and net zero emissions by 2050. Think about the opportunity cost for this, everyone. This is the thing. To achieve this will be significant diversion of resources to this technology. And there's an opportunity, a cost associated with that. What would you rather? Have all this clean energy, but then still have malaria deaths at all-time highs, have low access to clean water, not providing, first healthcare to people in remote parts of the world? What's more important? What do you think is going to have a better impact in the long term? If you haven't looked at it, I suggest you look at the Copenhagen Consensus. because that paints the very picture. We have limited resources. I know they like to print fiat money out of the moon, but that's work that people still have to do. And since we have this, seems to be, particularly in Western countries, an anti-natalist movement, we're going to have less people to work to pay these burdens. These commitments amount to a historic development. China, Japan, the US, and Europe together account for well over half of all the greenhouse gas emissions and over half of global GDP. The targets outlined in the Paris Agreement are now eminently achievable on a national and regional level. Moreover, a series of industry and corporate commitments now complements government efforts. Never before has the global climate movement been so large and so concrete. It's the establishment. It's the establishment. It's no longer revolutionary. Finally, 2021 will be the year when companies pivot from a strict short-term profit orientation towards strategies focusing more on the long-term viability of their businesses and on the interests and contributions of all stakeholders. To ensure business leaders embrace the concept of stakeholder capitalism back in 2019, when the Business Roundtable's pledge, and then in the Davos Manifesto of 2020, but they lacked the means to translate these principled commitments into measurable targets and non-financial reporting. This is no longer the case today. With the development of clear stakeholder capitalism matrix in 2020, all companies have the tools they need to turn environmental, social, and governance commitments into measurable actions. We're going to start seeing quotas in place. We're going to start seeing social justice manifest in business. This feels really like Atlas Shrugged. So again, this is a historic breakthrough that will have global ramifications. The big four accounting firms, Deloitte, EY, KPMG, and PwC, all completely ethical businesses, I'm certain of it, all contribute to the new metrics and can now incorporate them into their own yearly reporting on company performance. And they are joined by a host of large financial institutions. Look at these companies, Bank of America to BlackRock. I mean, come on. That have been increasingly vocal supporters of stakeholder capitalism. You know why? Because this is crony capitalism, everyone. It's just another veneer of crony capitalism. It's all the big boys that are going to add all these other measurable matrix that are going to give them a competitive advantage and to lock down and force out their competition. This is the danger. These three major developments, a renewed focus on public health and resilience, net zero pledges, and the arrival of stakeholder capitalism matrix, all but ensure that 2021 will be a new year zero. I mean, this new year zero, at least he's not saying new normal, but that's quite scary. In the aftermath of WW2, the building blocks are already in place, providing a foundation on which to construct a new era of improved well-being, inclusive economic growth, and climate action. Well, my one concern is, Mr. Schwab, of the unintended impacts on our liberties and freedoms and the economic and opportunity costs of devoting resources to all this posturing. We'll have to see, everyone. Climate change is, it is real. We are having an impact on the environment, but it is a slow-moving disaster which we can mitigate. This is the thing. You've got to realize all these claims and bullshit that they're talking about in 40 years. What technology is going to develop? If by impeding the economy, to meet these targets, by hamstringing us, you're reducing the innovative capacity of an economy, which could limit the chance of developing technology, which could mitigate all of these issues. But there are going to be certainly some people and groups that make good money out of all of this. So what do you all think, everyone? Do you think 2021 will be the year of the Great Reset? And are you encouraged by these proposals, these pillars? Or do they seem a little bit concerning to you? I mean, I'm sure we all trust the big accounting firms. Remember how prevalent they were in getting us, pushing for this cash ban here in Australia. Fantastic. It's all slowly, ever so slowly, chipping away at your individual freedoms and liberties. Even just a little bit, guys. It's not that much. We're slowly turning the temperature up. People need to be made aware of this. And there needs to be a public outcry and movement against this. Anyway, let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Please like, share, subscribe to the channel. If you're a fan and want to support the content I create here, there are a few ways you can. you can join us on YouTube or Patreon. You can support us using our affiliate links at Amazon, eBay, Independent Reserve, or AussieBroadband. You can buy a merch from HeiseSays, use Gold Pass from the Perth Mint, or support us via PayPal. Take care, everyone. I'll see you next time.